Hello fellow tankers, bonjour amis tankistes. Well done, you are now forming a nice little army of 1000 subscribers, and I wanted to start this very special video by thanking you a lot for your support during the past 2 years. I started rather timidly this War Thunder tutorial channel during the very sad period of the first lockdown in France, ultimately having a lot of fun addressing most maps in the game. Actually, for those new to this channel, I'm putting the link to a short video guide to the channel at the top right of the screen that explains its content and how to easily access what you might be looking for. So thanks again to you, subscribers and viewers, and let's now get to the main content of this video. So in the following, I will feature a tier 2, tier 3 gameplay in 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀 on the Tunisia map, which I will not actually comment, except for a brief preliminary reminder of my strategic advice on this map. I'll just overlay some commentary during the gameplay to explain what's going through my mind during the battle. Instead, I will focus on a discussion of the 3 ground modes, namely 𝗟𝗶, 𝗟𝗏 and 𝑠b, and certainly not to tell you that one mode is better than the other, whatever it would mean, but rather to try to convince you that the 3 modes have their own difficulty and own interest. It is of course totally normal to have a favorite mode, but I will also show you how you can improve your play in your favorite mode by becoming a more complete tanker who also explore the other modes. This will also bring more variety to your experience in War Thunder, which I think is also important not to get bored with the game. You have noticed that most of my videos are in 𝗟𝗶, even if I invite you to explore my playlist in 𝗟𝗶 on this channel. Even though I have almost 6,000 battles in 𝗟𝗶 and 𝗬𝗏, I really love 𝗟𝗶, and I will explain the main reason for that at the very end of this video. So don't miss it, because I think I will expose really interesting and a bit original point of view. But my main motivation for showing most of my gameplays in 𝗟𝗶 is that this mode is in fact more pedagogical in the context of strategic tutorials. On the one hand, I can visit more regions of the map during a single battle in 𝗟𝗶, thanks to the greater speed of tanks. And in addition, seeing most of the enemy tanks on the minimap, I can thus comment on what the enemy is doing, their mistakes, and even their good strategy. Everything happens. And I can also comment about the battle dynamics that is establishing between the two teams. But let me insist on the fact that the map guides that you will find on this channel really apply to all 3 modes. Before moving on to this discussion of the 3 ground modes during the gameplay, let me emphasize that there is no easy mode, or elite mode, or noob mode, or mode for snobs or cowards, or no boring mode. The 3 modes are as difficult as each other to reach a good level, and each has its own interests that I will review in this video. Again, there is no problem having a favorite mode, but I really advise you to try the other modes, and I hope that this video will give you some tips, some hints on how to appreciate them. So before addressing the 3 modes in detail, let me just say a few words about this Tunisia map, and I really refer you to my main tutorial, which appears now in the top right corner of the screen, and many gameplays that I've already posted in arcade and in 𝗟𝗶 on this map, to really understand that on this map my advice is that you concentrate on A and B, the 2 connected caps, which are easy to attack and defend together. Remember that you need 2 caps to win a game, and in particular you will exploit the passage between the river, which is very safe and very well protected from campers, and in particular the not very useful campers on the hills over A, on the red side and on the blue side, which essentially cannot do anything against the players fighting in the river, as you will see, and they essentially only shoot at each other, which essentially serve absolutely no purpose. And again, I refer you to my main tutorial to understand why I really advise you, especially in the beginning of the game, to go to C, which is essentially irrelevant. A few comments about the gameplay that you will see and that I will absolutely not comment during the game. So I will be playing my French lineup at BR 4.0, and we will be in a 5.0 battle. And I will start by capping B, something which I do quite often from the both sides, despite the fact that very often I also directly go to A. So I will first cap B and then go inside the river to essentially flank the people on A, capture A, and ultimately I will go back to B to secure B and go back to A and so on. And during the gameplay I will add some written comments just to explain a bit what's in my mind and why I'm taking such or such decision. So I will first discuss what the three modes have in common, and in particular the necessary skills to progress and become a good player, whatever the mode. So as I said in the intro, none of the three modes are easy, at least if your goal is to reach a good level. It's obviously as easy in any mode to be a bad player. I have seen pure RB players absolutely terrified in AB, like a rabbit in the headlights of a car, and pure AB players panicking in RB, expecting to be shot by invisible enemies at any time. So in fact, I consider that the three modes first require a very good awareness and a very good understanding of your environment. In AB, because many enemies see you in-game marker or your tank on their minimap, which forces you to be very alert and very reactive. In RB and SB, it's actually the opposite, because your enemies have no markers and can emerge from anywhere. And in particular, you have to be very attentive to engine salves or shots or change in the vegetation. For instance, if you see a tree falling in the forest in front of you, it's probably an enemy approaching. In addition, the three modes require a very good knowledge of the maps, the good roads to go from one important area of the map to another, and also understanding what the teams are doing in general on such or such maps. Finally, the three modes, and in particular AB and RB, require you to have a very good understanding of how the battle unfolds in general and how you must react again on such or such map. By the way, the objective of my tutorials is really to provide you with the advice on how to move on a map and about the good and the bad shooting positions on a map, but also to give you some strategic advice for starting a battle with a plan and to know how to react during the course of the battle. In fact, when I speak of an active player or active playstyle, an expression which I'm using quite often in my videos, I am thinking of a player who knows how to react and adapt to the evolution of the battle, who always tries to have a plan in mind to have a real impact on the battle rather than remaining passive behind a rock throughout the battle while having barely left the spawn. And finally, the three modes of course require you to have a very good knowledge of your tanks and those of the enemies, their strengths, weaknesses and weak spots, as well as a good command of the choice and effects of the different ammunition. More generally, the general mechanics of the game are really not easy to master and require a lot of experience, whatever your preferred game mode. For new or inexperienced players who are watching my videos, be patient and don't discourage yourself. It takes a very long time to master the game, and you will learn continuously, as I still do. But this progress curve will be really rewarding, and this fantastic game, essentially, you will simply never fully explore it. So I will now discuss the free modes more specifically, mentioning what can attract people to play them and what each mode can bring to them. So let's start with arcade, 𝗟𝗶𝘆𝗀. So tanks are faster, the gameplay is hence faster paced than in 𝗟𝗶 or 𝗬𝗏, which basically allows you for having less downtime and for doing more different stuff in a single battle and explore the maps more, obviously only if you are an active player, and you can do that even with heavy tanks or SPGs, which obviously for some of them in 𝗟𝗶 can be extremely slow. In 𝗟𝗶, battles are in principle more balanced due to the non-separations of nations. Obviously, in 𝗟𝗶, statistically speaking, the two teams have the same kind of tanks. The same tanks are available for the two teams. So, in sense, you will have a better balance, and actually, you will probably discover faster the different kind of tanks that you will find at the BR range. Something also that I like with 𝗟𝗶 is the fact that you have free spawns, which forgives an error, allows for risk taking, but also gives you a limit and gives you a kind of fear to die. As you will see right now, there is a problem on this issue in 𝗟𝗶, whereas in this 𝗬𝗏 right now you have also a spawn system a bit similar to what you have in 𝗟𝗶, which I think is actually good. So I will not mention here my main reason why I actually love 𝗟𝗶, and I will keep that for the very end of the video, so don't miss it. And let me right now mention that getting started in 𝗟𝗶 is indeed easier, especially for a new player or an inexperienced player. So it doesn't mean that 𝗟𝗶, to become a good player, as you will see, is easier, but to start in 𝗟𝗶 is definitely easier. So I really advise new player to play 𝗟𝗶, obviously to try 𝗟𝗏 and even why not 𝗬𝗏, but don't neglect 𝗟𝗶, because you will learn a lot, as we will see in 𝗟𝗶. Let me mention that for 𝗟𝗏 players who may recognize themselves that their game is a bit too passive and that their impact on the battle is a bit probably too low, and they would want to make progress, maybe because their win rate is essentially stuck at 50%. Playing in 𝗟𝗶, as I will emphasize now and at the very end of the video, will help you actually to make a lot of progress. So one reason 𝗟𝗶 is good for inexperienced players and even new players is that the green cross and the head that you will get from the green cross when you will shoot your gun will allow you to familiarize yourself with the guns and the shells of the different tanks, and to learn more quickly the weak spots of the different tanks in the game and of all nations. So that will give you actually automatism when playing 𝗟𝗶 and 𝗬𝗏, better and faster knowledge of your gun. Let me mention actually that I advise you to play unspeeded tanks and slow-moving tanks, unspeeded tanks in 𝗟𝗏 first, because they can be really horrible to play in 𝗟𝗶 when they are totally unspeeded without any mobility modification. And also when you have you just got a new tank, try it in 𝗟𝗶 so that you will be able to familiarize yourself faster with their gun. So a big interest of playing 𝗟𝗶 is that you will discover faster the best routes, and especially the anti-campers route, in the sense that if a route is safe in 𝗟𝗶, it is probably safe in 𝗟𝗶 and 𝗟𝗏, even surely safe. Let me also mention that in 𝗟𝗶, seeing what the other team is doing helps you to better understand the dynamics of a battle on a given map. And for instance, if you struggle on a map in 𝗟𝗶, try to play it in 𝗟𝗶 to understand it better, and obviously watch my tutorials. Let me mention also that when a player progresses in 𝗟𝗶, gets into the habit of very often looking at the minimap, which will also be very useful in 𝗟𝗶, not really in 𝗟𝗏. I find very often that pure 𝗟𝗶 players are sometimes not watching any of their minimap and actually trying to exploit the information that they get on the minimap. And finally, and maybe most importantly, I would say that in 𝗟𝗶 the faster tanks make it easier to practice and ultimately acquire an active playstyle which will help you to apply it in 𝗟𝗶 and 𝗟𝗏. So let's move now to 𝗟𝗶. So obviously what people like and what I like with 𝗟𝗏 is that it's a much more immersive gameplay than in 𝗟𝗏. I won't say that it's realistic, because repairing your tracks in 25 seconds is not necessarily very realistic, but definitely the gameplay is much more immersive than in 𝗟𝗶. But it's actually not really what I like the most with 𝗟𝗶. What I like the most in 𝗟𝗶 is the concept of hunting, of tracking, or of searching for an enemy. You know that there is an enemy in the zone, like right now in the gameplay, and okay, you have to look for it. Okay, and you may use the noise or other information to try to spot it and ultimately hunt it. So that's really an aspect which is missing in 𝗟𝗶. In 𝗟𝗶 you can surprise and flank and come behind your enemies like in 𝗟𝗏, but this notion of hunting, tracking and searching for the enemy is obviously not as strong as in 𝗟𝗏. In 𝗟𝗏 was something that I like, especially since I play a lot of light tanks, and in this battle I scouted several tanks, especially in the beginning when I was on aim, and obviously the scouting dynamics is very interesting in 𝗟𝗶. For people who loves to fly, obviously 𝗟𝗏 is quite interesting because you have a truly mixed battles. Obviously it's not a real motivation for me since I'm barely flying, and obviously in arcade air battles during ground battles is more like a gimmick compared to 𝗟𝗏. But still remember that in ground 𝗟𝗏 battles are still usually won on the ground, especially with the importance of capturing caps. Also, obviously, a very good pilot can have a huge impact. So the thing that I don't like currently in 𝗟𝗏 is the fact that you have virtually unlimited spawns, that it takes very little to get a new spawn, and that actually explains why something like 10 players in job have a 90% win rate, monthly win rate in 𝗟𝗏. Is that you may call us tryhards, but yes, in a difficult battle we respawn, we use backups, etc. We may respawn 6, 7, 8 times, and yes, most of the time we ultimately win just because of that. And unfortunately in 𝗟𝗏, obviously much more than in 𝗟𝗶 and 𝗟𝗏, the team which respawn the most ultimately very often is the one which will win. So let me just conclude with 𝗬𝗶, where you have obviously a very even more immersive gameplay, but obviously you are alone on the minimap, and the principle of hunting is even more relevant, but with the risk that the gameplay will be reduced to just that, and to the detriment of team play and of the strategic aspect that becomes almost irrelevant. So the gameplay is finished. So that was a pretty good battle, navigating between A and B, as I advise you in my main tutorial. And as you can see, with 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀, we had a huge impact on the game, with skills, but also caps. So 𝗟𝗲𝘁'𝘀 is one of the very, very best players in the game. I really advise you to look at his stats in the game or on Thunder skill, and you will notice that he's a monster in 𝗟𝗶𝘀, probably one of the best players in the game, but he's also a monster in 𝗵𝗶, like the 10 or so players that you will find in job among the top players in 𝗟𝗶𝘀 according to their win rate. You notice it's actually very often I have a bit of the discussion with 𝗟𝗲 on this map, because it's a map that sometimes he's not playing very good. He used to go always to C, and now he understands more that A and B plays a more important role. This is actually not a very good game for him, and you notice still that he kept on fighting with 5 respawn. You notice that we were in a 5-0 game, whereas we were playing our 4-0 lineup, and you notice that our 3 players at BR 5-0 simply didn't respawn after dying and doing essentially nothing. So again, that's an aspect, the number of spawns that people actually use is for me as a too important impact. You notice that the 2 top players in the enemy team, but also by their impact, respawn 6 times, 5 times. Alright, so I know that this video is already long, but let me finish by mentioning what I particularly like about 𝗵𝗶, and why I think that 𝗵𝗶 can also have a great impact on your skill level. So in addition to my general interest for tanks, you probably understand that the strategic and tactical aspects are a great motivation for me to play the game. And the main reason I love Ground 𝗵𝗶 is that it is actually the mode where these aspects can be experienced and exploited to their maximum. I know this may sound like a bizarre or even provocative statement, but keep with me, this is just pure logic. In general, in a game, the more information you have, the better is your ability to take informed strategic decisions. Chess is a richer and a more strategic game than card games like poker or even bridge. They are interesting games with psychology, stuff like that, but on a strategic point of view, poker is just a game for babies. And it's simply because in chess the players have access to all the information to make their decisions. So they can be actually much more informed and much more elaborate. Of course, that does not mean that all players are equally able to exploit this information to make a good strategy, but that's exactly what makes the difference between a good player and a less skilled player. Well, in War Thunder, it's essentially the same. For instance, my main issue with 𝗬𝗶 is that in practice, team collaboration and strategy play a lesser role, simply because you don't even see your allies on the minimap, not to mention your enemies. On the opposite side of the strategy spectrum, the more information available in 𝗵𝗶, if you exploit it correctly, which not all players are doing, allows you to make informed strategic decisions and will punish even more players and teams not exploiting this information. Obviously, 𝗟𝗶 stands in the middle, and the minimap still contains a lot of information, like the placement of your team, hits on the enemies, and scouted enemies. But many pure 𝗟𝗶 players could really benefit to develop their active playstyle and strategic skills by also playing some 𝗟𝗶, and we'll maybe see this mode in a different eye after watching this video. So anyway, thanks for supporting this channel, and thank you my army of 1000 subscribers, and as always, see you on the battlefield. À bientôt sur le champ de bataille.